The Galactic High Council chamber was an architectural marvel, an awe-inspiring arena of light and sound. Circular tiers spiraled upward, with representatives from every major star system seated in their designated pods, each radiating their species' distinct characteristics. A hushed tension filled the air, broken only by the hum of the levitating platform that carried Admiral Zorith to the center. His crimson-scaled form gleamed under the shimmering starlight projected above, each movement deliberate and commanding attention. Admiral Zorith was no stranger to the Council's judgmental eyes. As a seasoned strategist from the Krellan Dominion, he had orchestrated countless operations against rebellious colonies. Yet, humanity, a fledgling species from the unremarkable third planet of Sol, had become an unsolvable riddle. Despite their physical frailty and chaotic governance, humans consistently overcame insurmountable odds. This time, Zorith was determined to ensure humanity's defeat, without the need for costly battles. Esteemed members of the Council, Zorith began, his voice amplified by the chamber's acoustics. It reverberated with confidence, though the stakes weighed heavily on him. We face a species that defies the natural order. Humans are not the strongest, nor the smartest, and yet they persist. They adapt. They thrive where logic dictates they should fail. A wave of murmurs spread through the assembly. Humanity's reputation preceded them. The miners of asteroid 7K4 who survived a total atmospheric collapse by sealing themselves in makeshift shelters of duct tape and metal scraps. The soldiers of the Earth Defense Fleet who had outmaneuvered superior alien technology with nothing more than intuition and reckless determination. The scientists who cracked alien genetic codes just to reverse-engineer vaccines for diseases never seen on their planet. They must be stopped, Zorith continued. And we cannot afford another direct conflict. Their resilience makes them unpredictable in battle. He gestured toward a holographic projection in the center of the chamber. It flickered to life, displaying rolling green hills covered in neatly aligned rows of vines. Instead, we will attack their greatest weakness, their dependence on a fermented beverage they call wine. The room fell silent. A representative from the insectoid Plisthari Alliance clicked its mandibles skeptically. Wine? It chittered, its voice a series of rapid clicks translated into the common tongue. This is your master plan? To assault them with beverages? Zoritha's serpentine lips curled into a smile. Not just beverages. Culture. Identity. Humans do not merely consume wine, they revere it. They celebrate with it, mourn with it, and even use it as a centerpiece in rituals of bonding and diplomacy. By targeting their wine, we strike at the heart of their society. He turned to Dr. Krillith, the Androxian biochemist seated among the scientific advisors. Explain the compound, Zorith commanded. Dr. Krillith, a skeletal figure with elongated limbs, stood and activated a secondary hologram. A series of molecular structures appeared, shifting and rotating in an intricate dance. This is Neurothrix 7, Krillith began, its voice smooth and clinical. It is a neurochemical agent engineered to bind seamlessly with the tannins and other polyphenol in wine. Once ingested, it subtly alters neural pathways, increasing suggestibility and reducing resistance to external commands. The Plisthari representative clicked again. And humans won't detect this contamination? Impossible, Krillith replied, a note of pride creeping into its tone. Their rudimentary detection technology cannot differentiate between the compound and natural wine elements. Furthermore, the potency of Neurothrix 7 increases with time, mirroring the aging process humans value so highly in their finest vintages. Zorith surveyed the room, watching the gradual shift in expressions. Skepticism gave way to intrigue, and intrigue blossomed into outright approval. Even the stoic Zarnoth delegation, known for their distrust of unconventional tactics, exchanged nods of agreement. This operation requires precision, Zorith continued. Our agents will infiltrate Earth's vineyards, posing as critics, sommeliers, and workers. They will ensure that every major wine-producing region is laced with neurothrix 7. The humans will drink themselves into submission, oblivious to their gradual transformation. The council erupted into a cacophony of voices. Some praised the brilliance of the plan, while others raised concerns about the logistics. One reptilian representative leaned forward, its scaled face contorted in suspicion. And what of the humans' adaptability? They have survived plagues, radiation, even the vacuum of space. What makes you so certain this will work? Zoratha's smile widened. Their very nature. Humans trust their traditions implicitly. Wine is a symbol of sophistication and culture to them. They would sooner question the stars themselves than suspect their cherished vintages. By the time they realize something is wrong, it will be far too late. The council voted overwhelmingly in favor of Operation Vitus Beneficium. Zorath left the chamber victorious, his claws clicking against the polished floor. He felt the weight of destiny pressing against him, the thrill of a plan poised to reshape galactic history. Back in his private quarters, Zorath activated his personal comm link. A three-dimensional image of an alien operative appeared, a wiry figure with translucent skin, posing as a human wine critic on Earth. The operative's human guise was impeccable, from the tailored suit to the carefully maintained mustache. Agent Vask, status report, Zorath commanded. Preparations are underway, Vask replied. We've secured positions in France, Italy, California, and several smaller wine regions. The first shipments of neurothrix 7 are already being integrated. And the humans suspect nothing? Vask hesitated. They are peculiar. Their critics argue endlessly over the notes and undertones in their wines. One of them described a glass of fermented grape juice as a tempest of citrus and nostalgia. But they have no reason to suspect infiltration. Zoratha's confidence swelled. Excellent. Begin the final phase. Soon, humanity's strength will become their undoing. As the call ended, Zorath gazed out the viewport of his quarters, watching Earth rotate slowly against the backdrop of stars. He could almost taste the victory, sweet and intoxicating like the very wine that would seal humanity's fate. Or so he thought. The vineyards of Earth stretched like verdant tapestries across its varied landscapes. From the rolling hills of Bordeaux to the sun-soaked valleys of Napa, every region had its own story, a tale of tradition, craftsmanship, and passion. But to the operatives of the Galactic High Council, these sprawling fields were battlefields, and their mission was clear: ensure humanity's submission through its most beloved beverage. Agent Vask adjusted his disguise in the mirror of a modest inn near Bordeaux. His human form was flawless, a lean, impeccably dressed wine critic with a penchant for dramatic metaphors. His mustache, though fake, was a masterwork of alien ingenuity. He practiced his lines, mimicking the tone he'd learned from human media. Ah, yes, I detect notes of oak, a hint of plum, and a whisper of rebellion subdued by fermentation. He chuckled to himself. Humans truly were absurd. Vask was one of dozens of agents deployed across the planet, each assigned to a critical wine-producing region. Their task: introduce neurothrix 7 into the global supply without arousing suspicion. It was, in theory, a straightforward mission. But humans, as always, were proving unpredictable. In California's Napa Valley, Agent Quora faced her own set of challenges. Disguised as a vineyard worker, she had spent the last week learning the intricacies of grape harvesting, a task far more physical than her Crelian physiology was built for. Her supervisor, a grizzled man named Joe, was suspicious of her lack of skill. "Barbara, is it?" Joe said, eyeing her as she awkwardly carried a basket of freshly picked grapes. "You said you had winemaking experience back in Nebraska?" Quora nodded enthusiastically, her human teeth showing in what she hoped was a convincing smile. "Yes. Very prestigious region. Known for its, underwater vineyards. Joe's eyebrows shot up. Underwater? Oh, yes. Unique terroir. Adds a distinctive, briny undertone. Joe stared at her for a long moment, then muttered something about New Age nonsense and walked away. Cora exhaled, relieved. Humans were both frustratingly inquisitive and wonderfully dismissive. She made a mental note to research Nebraska later. Meanwhile, in Italy, Agent Trask was embracing his role with far more enthusiasm. As a sommelier at an upscale winery in Tuscany, he had developed a flair for human drama. His exaggerated gestures and poetic descriptions of wine earned him accolades from patrons who marveled at his passion. Trask found it all amusing. This Chianti, he proclaimed to a crowd of tourists, holding his glass aloft, is not merely a beverage. It is a journey, a symphony of sunlight, soil, and soul. The humans applauded, some even snapping photos. Beneath his carefully crafted facade, Trask smirked. They were so easily captivated. But not all operations were going smoothly. Reports from other agents detailed minor setbacks. In Spain, an operative disguised as a vineyard manager had accidentally crushed a crate of Neurothrix 7 canisters while attempting to dance in celebration. In Argentina, another agent had consumed too much wine during a blending session and loudly declared his love for a vine. Despite these mishaps, the contamination effort was progressing. Back at the command center, a dilapidated wine bar in Cleveland, Ohio, Dr. Krillith monitored the situation with growing unease. The compound was being integrated as planned, but Krillith's scientific instincts warned of potential complications. Neurothrix 7 was powerful, but human biology was notoriously unpredictable. Pipsqueak, Krillith called to his assistant, a diminutive creature whose primary role seemed to involve stress management through snacks. Pull up the latest field reports. I need to know if there are any deviations in human behavior. Pipsqueak, his mouth full of what Earthlings called pretzels, nodded and tapped at his console. Most regions are reporting normal integration. Humans are consuming the contaminated wine without suspicion. And the anomalies? Pipsqueak hesitated. Well, there's Agent Wobble in France. He got into a spirited debate with a human about whether aliens exist. The human apparently won the argument. Dr. Krillith pinched what passed for a nose bridge among his species. And then there's Agent Splort in Australia. He accidentally added the compound to beer instead of wine. The humans there just called it a new flavor and kept drinking. Krillith groaned. Fools. The timeline is critical. If humans adapt too quickly, the compound's efficacy could be compromised. Despite the setbacks, the overall operation seemed on track. Infiltrators across Earth continued their work, embedding Neurothrix 7 into every major wine-producing region. The agents grew more confident with each passing day, their disguises solid, their mission progressing. Victory felt inevitable. On New Year's Eve, humanity unknowingly reached the climax of the alien plan. Across the planet, glasses clinked in celebration as millions raised their contaminated wines in toasts to new beginnings. At the Alien Command Center, Zorith and his team watched the live feeds from Earth, their excitement palpable. It begins, Zorith declared, his voice brimming with triumph. Soon, they will be ours. Dr. Krillith, ever cautious, monitored the biochemical data. The compound was circulating as planned, its neural-binding properties activating with each sip. But something felt off. Sir, Krillith said, his tone hesitant. The data is showing an anomaly. What kind of anomaly? Zorith demanded, his serpentine eyes narrowing. The human's neural responses, they're not behaving as predicted. Instead of increased suggestibility, we're seeing heightened stimulation in regions associated with resilience and creativity. Zorith frowned. Impossible. The compound is flawless. Sir, Pipsqueak interrupted, his voice trembling. You might want to look at this. The main screen shifted to a live feed from Sydney, where a New Year's party was in full swing. Humans were dancing, laughing, and consuming wine with reckless abandon. But instead of showing signs of mind control, they were doing something else entirely. They're celebrating, Zorith muttered, his voice filled with disbelief. Why are they celebrating? Dr. Krillitha's expression darkened. I warned you, Admiral. Humans have an uncanny ability to adapt. The compound isn't weakening them, it's making them more resistant. Zoritha's confidence faltered for the first time. He watched as humanity, oblivious to the alien scheme, embraced the very thing meant to destroy them. A plan meant to subjugate had seemingly backfired in spectacular fashion. And this was only the beginning. New Year's Eve across Earth was a spectacle unlike any other. Streets were alive with jubilant crowds, their cheers reverberating into the cold night air. Fireworks lit the skies in dazzling displays, and music poured from every corner. The intoxicating aroma of roasted chestnuts and food trucks mingled with the rich scent of wine, an unspoken universal language of celebration. For the alien operatives, this was supposed to be the night their plan reached fruition. Humanity's global toast would usher in a new era, one where every sip brought them closer to control. Instead, it marked the moment everything began to spiral out of their grasp. In Bordeaux, Agent Vask reclined in his private suite, watching the festivities through a holographic monitor. He sipped a glass of Earth's finest red wine, savoring the flavors he had come to appreciate in his disguise. Humans, he thought, had an undeniable knack for turning the mundane into an art form. Suddenly, his communicator buzzed, a high-priority alert from command. He frowned, setting down his glass. Vask here, he answered, his voice clipped. This is command. We have a situation, came Dr. Krillitha's sharp reply. Neurothrix 7 isn't working as intended. Humans are showing no signs of submission. In fact, reports indicate increased resistance. Vask froze, his mind racing. Increased resistance? That's impossible. The compound was designed to. I'm aware of the design, Krillith snapped. But the human's biochemistry is unpredictable. They're metabolizing the compound in ways we didn't anticipate. It seems to be amplifying their natural neural plasticity. Vask's claws tightened around the communicator. And what does that mean, exactly? It means, Krillith growled, that instead of becoming docile, they're becoming more creative, more adaptable, and, if this trend continues, more resistant to external manipulation than ever. In Tuscany, Agent Trask was oblivious to the growing chaos. He stood among a crowd of tourists, leading a grand New Year's toast at the winery where he worked. The humans around him were enthralled by his theatrical delivery. To the year ahead, Trask declared, raising his glass high. May it be as bold as this vintage, as rich as its tannins, and as enduring as the bonds we share tonight. The crowd erupted in cheers, clinking glasses with enthusiasm. Trask couldn't help but feel a pang of pride in his performance. These humans, while perplexing, were undeniably charming in their rituals. As he sipped his own wine, purely for show, his communicator buzzed discreetly in his pocket. He glanced at the message, urgent. Report to command. Trask excused himself, slipping into a quiet corner. He activated the communicator, his expression turning grim as he listened to the situation. They're resistant to the compound, he whispered, disbelief coloring his tone. Not just resistant, Krillitha's voice replied, crackling over the line. They're thriving. Reports are coming in from multiple regions. Humans are innovating new ways to celebrate. Some are creating devices to spray wine into crowds. Others are improvising songs and dances inspired by their drinks. It's chaos. Trask sighed, leaning against the stone wall of the vineyard. So, what's the plan now? Do we retreat? No, Zoratha's commanding voice interrupted. We adapt. Double down on infiltration. Blend in further. Find another angle of attack. Trask hesitated. And if they adapt again? There was silence on the line before Zorath responded, his tone low and cold. Then we escalate. In California's Napa Valley, Agent Quora was grappling with a different problem. Her human supervisor, Joe, had invited her to a New Year's gathering at his home, a surprising gesture of camaraderie. Quora couldn't refuse without raising suspicion, so she found herself standing in the middle of a raucous house party, holding a glass of wine she had no intention of drinking. "Hey, Barbara!" Joe called out, clapping her on the back. "What do you think of the wine? Good vintage, huh?" Quora forced a smile. "It's robust," she said, parroting a term she'd heard earlier. Joe laughed. "Robust. I like that. You know, you've been a great addition to the team. We're lucky to have you." The sincerity in his voice caught Quora off guard. For a moment, she felt a pang of guilt. These humans weren't just targets, they were living, breathing beings with quirks and complexities. It was easy to see why they were so resilient. Their strength wasn't just physical or technological, it was rooted in their connections, their humor, their unyielding spirit. As she observed the humans around her, dancing, laughing, sharing stories, she couldn't help but feel a twinge of doubt. Was their mission truly justified? Or had the Council underestimated the cost of underestimating humanity? At the Cleveland Command Center, Zorath watched the live feeds with mounting frustration. The humans were supposed to be docile by now, their minds pliable and their wills subdued. Instead, they were reveling, pushing their celebrations to new extremes. In one feed, a group had constructed a makeshift wine slide in the middle of a snowy street. In another, a crowd was performing an elaborate synchronized dance with wine glasses balanced precariously on their heads. "This isn't submission," Zorath muttered, his scales bristling. "This is madness." Dr. Krillith, standing nearby, folded his skeletal arms. "Madness, Admiral? No. This is humanity." "What are you implying?" Zorath growled. Krillith sighed. "I warned you. Humans are not like other species. They don't just survive, they thrive in adversity. They take the unexpected and turn it into an opportunity. Neurothrix 7 didn't weaken them. It inspired them." Zorath slammed his clawed fist onto the console, the impact echoing through the room. "Then we'll find another way. They can't adapt forever." Krillith shook his head. "Perhaps, Admiral. But if there's one thing I've learned, it's this: you underestimate humanity at your peril." As Zorath brooded, the screen shifted to a new feed. In Venice, a wedding party had turned a wine fountain into the centerpiece of their celebration. The bride and groom toasted each other with overflowing glasses, their laughter ringing out like a challenge to the stars. Zorath clenched his jaw. This wasn't over, not by a long shot. The alien operatives across Earth were growing uneasy. What had begun as a stealth mission to undermine humanity had turned into a baffling spectacle. Reports of human resilience and ingenuity continued to pour in, leaving agents questioning the effectiveness of Operation Vitus Beneficium. For every attempt to observe compliance, they found humans celebrating harder, inventing new games, and forging deeper connections. It was as though the compound had fueled their determination rather than eroded it. In Bordeaux, Agent Vasque was nearing his breaking point. He paced his suite, holographic reports floating in midair around him. The data was damning. Consumption of contaminated wine had reached near total global penetration, but instead of diminishing resistance, humanity seemed emboldened. "This doesn't make sense," Vasque muttered, claws tapping rhythmically against the glass of his wine goblet. We studied their biology. We accounted for every variable. How can they metabolize a neurothrix 7 like this? Dr. Krillitha's voice crackled through the communicator. Because humans don't conform to expected outcomes. Their brains are chaotic, constantly rewiring in response to stimuli. Neurothrix 7 was supposed to disrupt that process, but instead, it's amplified it. Vask growled in frustration. Amplified it how? Krillith hesitated before responding. Their creativity. Their problem-solving. Their capacity to unite under pressure. We've unintentionally strengthened their greatest strengths. As if to underscore the point, Vask's monitor shifted to a live feed from Paris. A group of humans had constructed an enormous, wine sculpture, complete with cascading fountains of red and white, while a crowd cheered and raised their glasses in a synchronized toast. A single banner above the display read, "To Humanity." Vask's claws dug into the armrest of his chair. This wasn't supposed to happen. In Napa Valley, Agent Quora was experiencing her own crisis of faith. The house party had devolved into a whirlwind of laughter and storytelling, and she found herself strangely captivated by it. Joe, her human supervisor, was recounting a tale of his family's vineyard surviving wildfires, his voice filled with pride and determination. "We lost nearly everything," he said, swirling his glass thoughtfully. "But you know what? We rebuilt. We planted new vines, learned from our mistakes, and came back stronger. That's what we do, right? Humans are stubborn like that." Quora nodded absently, her alien mind grappling with an unfamiliar sensation, admiration. She had infiltrated Earth under the assumption that humans were primitive, their success a fluke of chance. But the more time she spent among them, the clearer it became, they weren't just lucky. They were relentless. Joe clapped her on the shoulder. "You're awfully quiet, Barbara. Everything okay?" Quora forced a smile. "Just thinking." At the Alien Command Center in Cleveland, Admiral Zorith was running out of patience. The live feeds showed the same infuriating pattern, humans thriving, adapting, and celebrating. The command room was thick with tension as Zorith addressed his advisors. "Enough of this failure," he snarled. "If Neurothrix 7 cannot subdue them, we escalate. Deploy secondary agents to weaken their infrastructure. Sabotage their supply chains. Starve them of resources." Dr. Krillith shook his head. "Admiral, with respect, that will only make them stronger. Humans excel under adversity. If we push too hard, we risk uniting them against us in ways we cannot predict." Zorith slammed his clawed hand onto the table. "Then what do you suggest? That we retreat? That we admit defeat to a species that defied our most advanced neurochemical weapon?" Krillith hesitated, then stepped forward. "No. I suggest we study them further. Understand why they thrive. There may be something to learn here, something we can use to our advantage." Zoritha's eyes narrowed. "Learn from them? They are insects compared to us." "And yet," Krillith replied calmly, "these insects are dancing circles around our plans." In Tuscany, Agent Trask had begun to question his role. The humans he worked alongside were not the brutish, predictable creatures described in briefing materials. They were passionate, inventive, and fiercely loyal to one another. He had witnessed countless moments of camaraderie and resilience, each one chipping away at his belief in the mission. One evening, while closing up the winery, Trask found himself in conversation with a young human named Elena. She spoke of her family's struggles during an economic downturn and how their love for winemaking had pulled them through. "Wine isn't just a drink," Elena said, her eyes bright. "It's a connection. A way to share our stories and celebrate what matters most." Her words lingered in Trask's mind long after she left. He realized with a sinking feeling that humanity's strength wasn't just in their adaptability, it was in their bonds. They thrived because they had each other. As the alien agents across Earth grappled with these realizations, humanity continued to surprise them. In Argentina, a small town held a spontaneous festival, turning every available surface into makeshift dance floors. In Australia, beachgoers built elaborate sand sculptures inspired by wine bottles. Even in the cold streets of Moscow, strangers shared warmth and laughter over steaming cups of mulled wine. The council's grand plan was unraveling, and the aliens were left with a choice: escalate their efforts and risk outright war, or abandon the mission entirely. Zorath, ever prideful, refused to admit defeat. But his operatives were beginning to see the truth. Humanity could not be conquered, not by force, nor by subterfuge. Their strength was woven into the fabric of their existence, a tapestry of resilience, ingenuity, and connection. And as the aliens watched their plan crumble, they couldn't help but feel a grudging respect for the species they had sought to dominate. The turning point had arrived, and the galaxy would never be the same. As Earth spun deeper into the alien-designed web, humanity's undaunted spirit began to shift the tide. What the aliens hadn't accounted for, and what no galaxy-wide strategy could have predicted, was humanity's ability to notice subtle disruptions and respond with unyielding determination. The very tools designed to subjugate them now inadvertently fueled their defiance. Agent Vask, stationed in Bordeaux, was the first to sense trouble. His holographic display flickered to life with intercepted transmissions from Earth's digital networks. A viral video had emerged, depicting a sommelier during a wine-tasting event. "This vintage," the man said with exaggerated theatrics, swirling his glass, "is unlike any other I've tasted. There's something oddly energizing about it. It's as if the wine itself is urging us to achieve greatness." The crowd erupted in laughter, but the sentiment lingered. Within days, similar sentiments were echoed online, turning Neurothrix 7's effects into a cultural phenomenon. Bloggers, influencers, and everyday people shared their experiences, attributing newfound creativity and ambition to their wine consumption. "They're romanticizing it," Vask growled, pacing his suite. The compound was supposed to make them compliant, not inspired. Back in California, Quora was dealing with her own unraveling situation. Joe had invited her to yet another gathering, this time a community meeting of local vineyard owners. She arrived reluctantly, expecting discussions about grape yields and weather patterns. Instead, the room buzzed with talk of collaboration and innovation. "We need to unite," Joe declared, standing at the head of the room. The wine industry has always been about tradition, but it's also about adaptation. If we work together, we can create something new, something that'll leave a legacy. The room erupted into applause, and Quora felt a pang of unease. These humans weren't just surviving, they were thriving. The contaminated wine had become a symbol of their ingenuity, spurring bold ideas and forging alliances across regions. Meanwhile, in Cleveland, Admiral Zoratha's frustration reached a boiling point. The Alien Command Center buzzed with activity as analysts reported on humanity's growing resilience. "They've turned our weapon into a source of inspiration," an analyst reported grimly. Social movements are emerging around the idea of wine-powered creativity. Humans are organizing festivals, launching new ventures, and even creating art in homage to the wine. Zoratha's claws tightened around the edge of the command table. "Enough of this nonsense. Prepare the escalation protocol." Dr. Krillith stepped forward, his skeletal frame casting long shadows in the dimly lit room. "Admiral, I must advise against this. Escalation will only provoke them further. We've seen it time and again, humanity thrives under pressure." "Then what do you suggest, Doctor?" Zorath snapped. "That we sit back and let them make a mockery of us?" Krillith hesitated before speaking. "I suggest we study them. Understand how they're adapting and why. There may be knowledge here, valuable knowledge, that could benefit the Council." Zorath glared at him, but the words lingered. The council would not look kindly on failure, and the doctor's suggestion offered a potential way to salvage some form of victory. In Tuscany, Agent Trask had been drawn into a growing movement among local winemakers. The humans, unaware of his true nature, welcomed him as one of their own. They shared stories, ideas, and plans for a global event, a celebration of humanity's spirit. It was a bold undertaking, bringing together winemakers, artists, and performers from across the planet to showcase the very resilience the aliens sought to suppress. Trask found himself conflicted. The humans' optimism was infectious, their determination unwavering. For the first time in his long career as an infiltrator, he questioned the morality of his mission. These people were not the brutish, simplistic beings the council had described. They were creators, dreamers, and fighters, united by a shared love for life and the connections that bound them. One evening, as the group finalized plans for the event, Elena, a young winemaker who had taken a particular liking to Trask, turned to him with a thoughtful expression. "You know," she said, "it's funny. Everyone talks about humanity's flaws, our conflicts, our mistakes. But I think our greatest strength is that we never give up. No matter what happens, we find a way to keep going." Trask nodded, her words cutting deeper than she could have known. He had come to Earth to undermine these people, yet he found himself drawn to their spirit. The mission, once so clear, now felt impossibly murky. Across the planet, humanity continued to rally. Social networks buzzed with talk of innovation and unity, inspired by the very substance meant to subdue them. Wine festivals became platforms for collaboration, sparking movements that transcended borders. From the vineyards of France to the rolling hills of Argentina, a new energy coursed through humanity, fueled by their shared defiance. The Galactic High Council's operatives, scattered across Earth, began to falter. Their carefully laid plans were unraveling before their eyes, and whispers of dissent spread among their ranks. Some, like Trask and Quora, began to question their allegiance, while others doubled down on their efforts to regain control. But one thing was clear: humanity would not be conquered easily. Their strength lay not in their technology or their numbers, but in their unyielding ability to turn adversity into opportunity. As Admiral Zorith watched the live feeds, his claws trembling with frustration, he realized the truth. Humanity was not a species to be subdued. They were a force to be reckoned with, a chaotic storm that defied prediction and refused to yield. The battle for Earth was far from over, but the aliens were learning a harsh lesson: in the face of humanity's indomitable spirit, even the most carefully crafted plans could crumble. The turning point of humanity's resilience was no longer a quiet undercurrent, it was a roaring tide. Across the globe, the alien operatives found themselves caught in the unrelenting wave of human ingenuity. The humans had not only adapted to the effects of Neurothrix 7 but had embraced it, channeling the unintended boost in creativity and resolve into something unstoppable. For Admiral Zorith, the situation had grown intolerable. He paced the command center in Cleveland, his claws tapping a staccato rhythm against the polished floor. His once impeccable confidence now wavered under the weight of relentless failure. The feeds from Earth were no longer mere data streams, they were a mockery of his ambitions. "This cannot continue," Zorith hissed, slamming his fist onto the console. "Humanity is turning our operation into a celebration of themselves. We need to regain control." Dr. Krillith, ever the cautious voice of reason, stepped forward. "Admiral, I've run further analyses. The compound's effect is no longer chemically contained, it's cultural. Humanity thrives on challenges. The more pressure we exert, the more they unite." Zorith turned on him, his scaled face darkening. "Are you suggesting we abandon the mission?" Krillith paused, choosing his words carefully. "I'm suggesting we reassess our approach. Direct confrontation will only strengthen them. We need to understand their adaptability if we're to find a way forward." In Bordeaux, Agent Vasque was grappling with his own frustrations. Every attempt to control the narrative had failed. Humans were not only consuming the contaminated wine, they were elevating it. The internet was flooded with stories of people overcoming personal struggles, creating art, or launching businesses inspired by what they jokingly called the wine of miracles. One viral video showed a young woman, previously paralyzed by self-doubt, painting an enormous mural of humanity's triumphs through history. As she worked, crowds gathered, their cheers echoing through the streets. Vask watched the video with a sinking feeling. "They're turning our weapon into a symbol of hope," he muttered to himself. Another alert flashed on his console. A global event was taking shape, the Unity Festival. It was being organized by winemakers, artists, and leaders from every corner of the planet. The festival promised to be a celebration of humanity's strength and creativity, with wine at its symbolic center. Vask leaned back in his chair, claws drumming against the armrest. "If this continues, they'll expose us," he thought. And if they do? In Tuscany, Agent Trask had become an unwilling participant in the Unity Festival preparations. His human companions were tireless in their efforts, their enthusiasm infectious. Elena, the young winemaker whose optimism had begun to chip away at his resolve, was at the forefront of the movement. "Trask," she said one evening as they sat overlooking the vineyard, the golden light of sunset casting long shadows. "I've never seen anything like this. People coming together from all over the world, united by something so simple. It's beautiful." Trask didn't respond immediately. His mind churned with conflicting thoughts. He had come to Earth to subjugate these people, to bring their chaotic ways under control. Yet, as he watched them unite in ways his own kind could scarcely imagine, he couldn't help but wonder if the Galactic Council had underestimated them. "What if," Trask began, his voice hesitant. "What if this strength you see comes from something deeper? Something intrinsic to humanity?" Elena smiled. "I think it does. We're not perfect, but we don't give up. We find beauty in the struggle." Her words struck a chord in Trask. Could it be that this so-called primitive species held a power the Council had overlooked? A strength that couldn't be measured in technology or strategy? Back in Napa Valley, Agent Cora faced her own crisis. Joe and the other vineyard owners had asked her to join the Unity Festival Planning Committee. She had spent days working alongside them, her alien heart growing heavier with each passing moment. These humans, so open, so passionate, had begun to see her as one of their own. "Barbara," Joe said one afternoon, handing her a glass of wine. "You've been a real blessing to this community. We couldn't have done this without you." Cora's fingers tightened around the glass. She had never felt guilt before, not in her decades of service to the Council. But now, standing among these humans who had welcomed her without hesitation, the weight of her deception was unbearable. As the Unity Festival approached, the Galactic High Council watched with growing unease. The humans were no longer just surviving, they were thriving, their defiance an unspoken challenge to the galaxy. Admiral Zorath gathered his senior operatives for a final briefing. "We will not allow this festival to solidify their resistance. Prepare the disruption protocols. If we can't control them, we will sow chaos instead." Dr. Krillith frowned. "Admiral, with all due respect, this is a mistake. Humanity thrives in chaos. If we escalate further, we risk galvanizing them into a force we cannot contain." Zoratha's eyes burned with fury. "Then let them come. If humanity wishes to challenge the galaxy, we will crush them." As the meeting ended, Krillith lingered, his mind racing. Humanity's strength was unlike anything the galaxy had encountered. And as the Unity Festival drew near, he couldn't shake the feeling that the Council was about to learn a hard truth: humanity was not just resilient, they were unstoppable. The stage was set. The Unity Festival promised to be a celebration of everything humanity had endured and achieved. For the aliens, it was a reckoning, a chance to see if their plans could still succeed or if humanity's indomitable spirit would prevail. The question was no longer if humanity would fight back, it was how far they would go. The Unity Festival was unlike anything the world, or the galaxy, had ever seen. Across Earth, humanity united in a singular celebration of resilience, creativity, and connection. Every corner of the globe buzzed with life, from the vineyards of Bordeaux to the beaches of Australia. Music, art, and the shared joy of wine bound people together in a way that transcended borders and cultures. For the alien operatives, it was a nightmare unfolding in real time. What should have been the crowning moment of their plan to subjugate humanity had become an unstoppable force of collective human spirit. The Galactic High Council's strategy was in tatters, and the humans had no idea how close they had come to losing their freedom. At the heart of the festival in Tuscany, Agent Trask stood among the throngs of people. Colorful lights illuminated the rolling vineyards as music filled the air. Families laughed, friends toasted, and strangers bonded as though they'd known each other forever. Trask's alien heart was heavy with conflicting emotions. Elena approached him, her face glowing with excitement. "Isn't it incredible," she said, gesturing to the scene around them. "This is what humanity is about. No matter what happens, we find a way to come together." Trask nodded silently, her words echoing in his mind. He had witnessed humanity's flaws, their chaotic nature, and their penchant for conflict. But here, amidst the laughter and unity, he saw their true strength, a strength the Council had failed to predict. "I need to tell you something," Trask said suddenly, his voice low. Elena tilted her head, her smile faltering. "What is it?" Before he could answer, the festival's main stage lit up. A speaker took the microphone, welcoming everyone and urging them to raise their glasses in a global toast. Around the world, millions of people did the same, their unity a defiant response to everything that had tried to divide them. In the Alien Command Center in Cleveland, Admiral Zorith seethed as he watched the feeds. "Activate the disruption protocols," he barked. "If they won't fall, we'll tear this celebration apart." Dr. Krillith hesitated. "Admiral, I strongly advise against this. Humanity has proven time and again that chaos only strengthens them. If we escalate now..." "Enough!" Zorith roared. "Do it." Across Earth, alien operatives received their orders. They moved to sabotage the festival, planting devices to disrupt communications, power supplies, and transportation networks. But as they worked, something remarkable happened. The humans noticed. In Napa Valley, Quora's cover had been blown. Joe and several vineyard workers had caught her tampering with a generator. At first, she feared the worst, expecting anger and rejection. But instead, they surrounded her, their faces a mixture of confusion and concern. "Barbara," Joe said, his voice heavy with disappointment. "What's going on? You've been one of us, part of our family. Why would you do this?" Quora's resolve crumbled. She couldn't lie anymore. "I'm not who you think I am," she admitted, her voice trembling. "I was sent here to harm you. To control you." There was a stunned silence before Joe spoke again. "Why?" "Because you're stronger than you realize," Quora said. "The Council sees you as a threat. They wanted to weaken you before you became too powerful." Joe looked at her for a long moment, then sighed. "Well, that's a damn shame, because you've got more in common with us than you think. You can make this right." Across the world, similar scenes played out. Alien operatives, exposed or confessing their missions, found themselves met not with violence but with something far more disarming: forgiveness. Humans offered them a chance to change, to stand with them instead of against them. Many took that chance. Agent Vask, watching the feeds from Bordeaux, made his decision. He deactivated his disruptor and sent a message to the Council: humanity cannot be subdued. They can only be understood. As the festival reached its climax, the alien sabotage efforts had been largely neutralized, not by force, but by humanity's ability to inspire change. On the main stage in Tuscany, Elena stood before the crowd, holding her glass high. "This wine," she said, her voice ringing out, "represents more than just tradition. It represents everything we are, our struggles, our triumphs, our ability to adapt and overcome. Tonight, we celebrate not just what we've endured, but what we've become." The crowd erupted into cheers as glasses clinked in unison. Across the planet, the toast was echoed, humanity raising their collective voices in defiance of adversity. In the command center, Zorath watched in stunned silence. His claws tightened, then slowly relaxed. He had lost. Humanity had not only resisted the Council's efforts, they had turned them into a celebration of their strength. Dr. Krillith approached him cautiously. "Admiral?" Zorath turned, his expression unreadable. "Perhaps you were right, Doctor. Perhaps there is something to learn from them." Krillith nodded. "Humanity is a force unlike any other. We underestimated them." Zoratha's gaze returned to the screen, where humans danced, sang, and toasted under the stars. "Let the Council know. The operation is over. But this isn't the end. We will watch. And we will learn." As the aliens retreated, humanity continued their celebration, unaware of how close they had come to losing everything. The Unity Festival became a symbol of their unyielding spirit, a reminder that no matter the odds, they would always rise together. And in the stars, the Galactic High Council began to realize what humanity had known all along: strength isn't just about power. It's about connection, resilience, and the indomitable will to face whatever comes next. Humanity had won, not with weapons, but with unity.